Thank you, everyone. So my name's Cory, co-founder, CEO at RetreatsAndVenues. Very excited to be here with an amazing panel. Just wanted to thank Running Remote for putting together an amazing conference. And I'm just going to introduce our panelists here, which I'm very excited about. So first off, we got Chase to the left here, head of operations and previously head of remote at Doist. Chase is an amazing guy. He works for a remote-first company, Doist, 100 people in 35 countries, and collectively supports over 40 million people globally. He's passionate about making distributed work, and regularly contributes to leading courses, conferences, podcasts. Chase is the top voice on LinkedIn, as a remote influencer on remote.com for the past 3 years, and has spent the last 15 years helping DLS grow. We also have Sasha, Franco, in the middle, events manager at Zapier. Woo! Sasha leads the strategy behind Zapier's retreats, offsites, and internal experiences, creating meaningful connections. Zapier's retreats are over 700 people, bringing people from 40 different countries. With a background in sales, hospitality, Sasha used to work at The Line, LA, 60 hotels, and brings deep expertise in negotiations, logistics, and budget management. And we got, last but not least, Georgie Roberts, coming all the way from Australia. So let's give her a hand for that. Woo! Georgie.
Thank you.
Georgie's a chief people officer at Float. Georgie is a fully remote company since 2011, B Corp, and rated as #1 management software. Float helps 4,500 teams, including Deloitte, Airbnb, plan their client work. So one thing I really was thinking about on this panel and how to create it, I wanted different dynamics. So we got the chief people officer kind of lens, we got the event manager, Sasha, and we got operations, Chase. So we're going to be a really dynamic panel today. In summary, what we're going to be going through is, #1, figuring out how to make the case. How do you get your leadership to buy into retreats and keep investing in them? The other thing we're going to talk about is finding your retreat rhythm and cadence. So how often should you run retreats? How do you figure that out? #3, we're going to talk about destination strategy. So where you go matters. How do you decide what to go and why? Designing the retreat agenda and experience to make sure it's as impactful as possible. We'll talk about booking and logistics to make sure everything runs. And then if we have some time, we'll do some retreat bloopers and some fun stories. So to kick it off, let's start with making the case. So retreats aren't possible unless you believe in them and your leaders believe in them. And there's really two things. There's the emotional side and the business side. So on the emotional side, I guess, how do you guys help your leaders feel the value of retreats and not just see it? And maybe Sasha will kick it off with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. In order to be able to execute an event, a retreat, you have to first have the green light to do it. And so at Zapier, we're really lucky in that our founders believe in retreats. They believe in the value of connection. But we have to make sure that that continues to stay top of mind. And so for me, I like to bring my leaders into the planning process. And I know that can be difficult because leaders are busy and you don't want to burden them or bother them. But we create really lightweight ways for leaders to provide input and to find points of alignment during several pivotal moments when we're defining our outcomes, when we're taking a look at the programming and the flow of the event, when we get to decide what is the event identity and the theme, the fun stuff, right? So we find these key moments throughout planning where we can bring our leadership in, get their input, make sure that it's woven through the event, and then they feel that sense of ownership. They get to see the thought, the planning behind it, and they feel connected to it. And so they don't just see the end result at the event. They don't just show up and are like, this was cool. They knew every moment and every decision that was made to get there. So that's one, is making sure the leaders feel connected and bought in and a sense of ownership. And also making sure that events are part of the broader company strategy. And so I think a lot of times we see events as these emotional connection points, and that is absolutely true. But they are also a very powerful vehicle for advancing business strategy. And so the more you can tie your programming to what the company is trying to accomplish and the mission, the more successful you'll be and the more you'll have internal advocates through your leaders. At Zapier, we recently just wrapped our all-company event, and we had an entire day dedicated to innovation and experimentation. And that was because it came from a rallying cry from our leaders to have that sort of energy throughout our work. And so we found a day and everyone got to, we had workshops that were, product knowledge workshops. We had people doing builder battles. There was so much energy that day. We came out with so many ideas and enthusiasm for this like spirit of innovation. And all of that came from, just listening to what our goals are and making sure those are present in your event.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Anyone else have anything to add?
It's hard to follow up from that, right? No notes, Sasha. I think maybe the only thing I would add from, I guess, the people perspective is this idea that the meetup actually is part of your rewards program. And so for your team members, yes, it's a place to align on strategy, it's a place to socialise and connect, but it's also a perk. It's also a value that you're adding when you're trying to attract and retain people. And so, there's value in that as well, and you can really gather some easy data that way too to back that up when you're having those conversations with leadership as well. We've found that, if we ask new starters, why did you join Float? Why were you interested working with us? It's like 80% of people will put the meetup as number one. So yeah, looking at it as like a powerful tool for reward is also really important. Yeah.
I guess I would just add, we probably all have something in common here, that our executives believe in retreats. They see it as a core part of how we build culture and connection. So we may not have to do a lot of convincing, but maybe for a lot of people in the audience, you do. I found it really interesting. We did budget cuts last year. Things were tight. We were preparing for the worst. The only thing that we didn't cut, and in fact we increased, was our retreat budget. So that's how much our executives believe in the fact that these are really important to the foundation of the company. One of the reasons that they feel so confident about that is because for many years we've been doing post-retreat surveys and gathering data. Executives love data. So if you're having to convince the executive team that this is something you should be doing and you're not getting any headway, showing that through data, testing it on a small scale, and then providing some retroactive feedback can go a long way.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And maybe that's a good segue. So there's kind of the emotional side, feeling, and you can't really quantify it. The other side people always ask, which is hard, how do you measure the impact or the ROI of a retreat? And I don't know if you guys use any data or insights or, have anything to share there.
I guess I accidentally jumped ahead in the agenda, sorry. It'd be very difficult to go into what that, what our post-retreat survey looks like, but we do a post-retreat survey basically to gather data, and then AI is made analyzing that. It's turned it from a full day task of analyzing it to 30 minutes, which is awesome. And basically distilling that content down so that everybody in the team can understand it, the executives can understand it. We're really looking for what do people get out of it, and how does it impact their connection with their teammates, and then how does that last over time. And so we found through our regular touch points, pulse check surveys, things like that, there seems to be a spike in engagement and connection to the company's core values and goals for a couple months following a retreat, and then that slowly starts to drop a little bit, and then it's retreat time again. So,
cool. Thanks for sharing. Sasha, Georgie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think something similar at Zapier. We do a post-retreat survey, and we ask several questions, but 3 of the key metrics we're looking to zero in on are centered on connection. And so we ask folks, how connected did you feel to the company mission, to the customers, and to one another? And so I think if we can find success in those 3, we'll know that the event was a success. There's obviously, we want to think about logistics and all these other things. And to Chase's point, we use AI quite a bit to analyze the survey results and to go through all of the comments and find common themes and make sure that we are extracting action items out of there. But yeah, just measuring connection is a really strong one for us. And then, he's been referenced quite a bit on stage, but Professor Raj from the Harvard Business School actually partnered with us and studied Zapier retreats for a handful of years and found that through those studies, he found that communication increases anywhere from 100 to 400% after an event. And so that's the kind of data that it's undisputed. Depending on how you looked at it, it was anywhere from double all the way up to 400%. So we know they work. We know they open connection pathways. They make people feel more comfortable to talk to one another. And so, yeah, rooted in data for sure.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. One follow-up question, Sasha, is like you said, tying the retreat to business outcomes and objectives. I'm curious, was there any way to figure out how to measure, hey, with a retreat, we can get there twice as fast, or we have more confidence? I know that's a hard question, but I was curious if you've ever experienced that, or, and if not, no worries.
I love that. If there was a way to do it, I'd be happy to know it. I don't know that there's like a quantifiable way. I do know that we have certain projects and initiatives that have kicked off post-retreat that maybe would not have, or that moved along faster. I don't know like days or numbers or hours, but yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Georgie?
I think really the only thing I'd add is I think the power of the like the qualitative versus the quant data too when it comes to retreats, because it really comes down to like the ideas that you're getting, and I do think sometimes the best ideas come from the team. And like we had a really cool chat earlier about if you want to inflate your engagement rate, then do a survey after a meetup. If you do want to do that. But I think one of the things that we've found really helpful, you had a really good example of this, Sasha, talking about when your team gave you feedback, like they got the best connections, like being in a taxi with like the 4 people they're in a cab, the 3 people they're in a cab with or whatever. And like for us, you know, we had all these like assumptions that we'd made about programming, and when we did surveys, they really challenged those assumptions. Like for me, I think our location really changes. Like one year it was Japan, the next year it was Italy, this year it's in Australia. Lucky for me, thank God. And, you know, I thought, like no one would want to be away for more than a week on a work trip. That's really hard for people. We'll never do it for more than a week. And then it's like you add just a bit of one box in your survey, like what would you add? And people are saying, make it longer. Like, why did we have to go home? You know, like, and you think, wow, like the difference with when it comes to retreat surveys in the qual versus the quant data, like you really have to open your eyes to like not make assumptions about the experience of your team. And I think it's a really powerful thing of like gathering those ideas. And through that, our retreat's now a week and a half long, which I can't believe people want to come for that long. And a part of that is optional, but we see like 50% of our team wanting to come for an additional half a week.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. One more on this one, maybe Chase. Just Doist is so bought into retreats. How many do you host a year now? Like 15 or 10?
Yeah, we do 13 per year right now. But that's like each person will go on 2 to 3, depending on their role in the company. But cool. 13 total.
That makes sense. Okay, so that's kind of a nice segue into the next one is finding your rhythm. So retreat cadence and budgeting, and maybe we'll just pick up on that there. How did you figure out that 13 retreats was the right number? How does that distribute based on, you know, positions and teams? Anything you could share?
Yeah, so like most things, I guess, like this was an iteration, evolved over time. At one point, we were robots and said, like, we don't need retreats. We work asynchronously. This is good for us. We don't need to see people. And then one day we were like, we should try meeting up. And we did that once, and we were like, inflection point, this is amazing. So we decided at that point, like, okay, we need an annual budget. So we assigned it on a per person basis. And then as we started inserting more retreats year after year, we kept increasing that number. And so are we going specific on numbers?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So now we're up to where we spend $6,500 per year per person on retreats. So we have an annual budget based on that per person head count.
Cool, thanks for sharing. And I think you shared with me, one of your friends said, what was it to have an office per employee? Obviously it depends.
Yeah, it depends a lot on where you are, but it's like around, on average, like I believe $12,000 per year. So people will say, that $6,500 is a lot of money per, you know, if you 6,500 times whatever your head count is. But as like Georgie said, like it's an amazing perk for people that they really look forward to. The benefits for us are very, very clear. And then when you price that against what an office space would be in a mid-tier city where we would have a lot of trouble attracting like talent, it pales in comparison.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So what's your all hands? What do you call it? Doist Connect, I think?
Doist Connect, yeah.
Cool. And then each team member goes on one other individual team retreat?
Correct, yeah. So we have one all hands retreat per year, and then about 6 months later, each individual team will go on their own, what we call a mini retreat. And then we have a leadership retreat.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Sasha, anything to share on the cadence and flow for Zapier?
Yeah, I think as with anything else, it's not like a set it and forget it. It's evolved quite a bit since I joined Zapier almost 4 years ago now. So before I started, it was twice a year, all company, and then each individual department had a mini retreat as well. That's when we were at a headcount of like 200-300. We're now at 800 and growing, and so it's just not scalable or sustainable. We're across 40 different countries to fly everyone to a central location. It's a work stopper. It's a chunk of time where people are not working necessarily. And so we have evolved to do one all-company retreat. We've invested a little bit more in that event and just kind of amplified it. And then we have a leadership retreat. And throughout the year, we have kind of ad hoc offsites, and those are more for like executives or other leaders or teams to get together and do like sprints of work. So it's just one all company, one leadership, and then ad hoc offsites.
Well, thanks for sharing. Georgie?
We do one a year, and then we'll do kind of sprint style ones. We just did one like 2 weeks ago. We planned that in like a few days. Glenn, the CEO, co-founder, just decided we had a problem needed to solve really quickly, and they got together. So those ones, they don't happen that often. They tend to be really lightweight, but it's really only one a year for us, the meetup. Yeah.
Can I ask, not to steal your role, Cory, but I'm curious because we don't do the sprints, and it's something we've talked about doing. Like, and I'm imagining this is like there's some project that you all are working on, and you feel like it would be good to get that group together to work on something. Is that correct? And like, how does that come together?
The Zapier framework for that's quite a cool one to talk about.
Yeah, it's actually a new idea we're piloting. It was born at the retreat, but we're calling them solution sprints, and it's exactly that, Chase. It's a project that needs to get done, and we think we can advance the work faster and more efficiently in person. So we keep it under 20 people. It's 2 days or less, so time box, small group of just like who are the key players in this. And then I've created this like fast track venue library, which is like pre-vetted venues because we spend so much time sourcing. And so if we can go to our partners and say like, hey, we're coming back, here's our RFP, like book us in. And then 2 days, and then very, very clear like outcomes on that. Like what are we trying to drive in these 2 days? And then just keep it moving.
That's awesome.
Thanks for sharing. And I guess for those sprints, do you have those pre-budgeted, or do you say, hey, we really need to rally around this? Hey, can we get some budget for this, and then it gets approved, or how does that get set up?
They're pre-budgeted in like a bucket. So we have our all-company retreat spend and then everything else, and it comes from that everything else budget.
Cool. Yeah, and I think a little bit of a trend I'm seeing is when you're maybe 200 or less, you can kind of maybe run more retreats, and then you get up to a certain size, and it just becomes very expensive. So that was maybe one thing to pick up. One thing, we actually had a customer book the other day, a 30-day workcation for their entire team. And so they had a really important project, and they're like, we're just going to rent out this amazing hotel and work for 30 days. So varies by demand. I guess the next thing I want to get into is destination. So where you go matters. There's a lot of different factors to consider in a destination. And I'm curious, maybe Chase, how do you choose a destination for the retreat? And does it vary by retreat type? And what are the factors that you're considering, whether to go to Mexico or Spain or Texas?
Similar to Zapier, we have created like a list of pre-selected venues and cities that we've mapped out that are like really optimal for flight time, budget, and just like where our team is located. We use those for what we call our mini retreats, so that teams basically like every year we can sort of reuse all the information that we learned the year before. So we have venues picked out, we have destination management companies we work with, we know the restaurants to send people to and the activities and things like that. So it's just like an efficiency thing. But then for our all hands, we move the location every year, and we've tried our best and succeeded so far not to go back to the same country. So the idea is just basically to keep moving to different places around the world. A lot of our team is based in Europe, and they've been pushing me to get out of Europe for many years. So this year we're going to Thailand for the first time, going to Asia for the first time. But most of the time it's like we're looking at logistics, like what is the most efficient way to get people to a place, both from a cost standpoint, but also time, which I think is like often overlooked. We will like map out like what does the whole team's flight pattern look like to get there, and if something costs relatively similar, one city costs similar to another city, but it saves a collective 300 hours of flight time, we'll go for the former. So yeah, I think those are some of the factors. And then of course you want to keep it exciting. Like I ask in the post-retreat survey, like where do people want to go next year? So we have some idea of where people are like interested in going, and then try to hone in on that.
Cool, thanks for sharing. Sasha, how about you?
Yeah, I think we do something similar at Zapier. We rotate the location every year. We are heavily based in North America, in the US and Canada specifically at Zapier, so we've tended to keep our retreats in the US. To your point, Chase, it keeps flights kind of like easy, less layovers, less time on the road, which can impact the event. But we do rotate locations into different cities. We've created a rubric to just kind of standardize the way we're evaluating venues, and so there's all these different criteria that we look at, and then each of them has a weight. So some things are way more important. Obviously, the availability is a deal breaker. If the hotel doesn't have the rooms, doesn't have the space, can't do it. If it doesn't fit in the budget, can't do it. And then we move on to more like important things like the flow, the food options, all that, and then we move into nice to haves. So everything gets plugged into this rubric. It makes it really easy and standardized. It also creates a point of visibility for our folks. So when we announce a retreat location, if anyone has questions, if they want to know why are we going there, how do we decide on that, we have this documented process that we can direct folks to. You know, we're big on transparency and visibility, so that helps us in that way. And we're always looking to find more efficiency, so we're playing with, you know, leveraging AI and automation to make sure that when we receive all the proposals from RFPs, as you guys know, they're not standardized. Some are in a Google Doc, some are in a PDF, some's in the body of an email. So kind of using that, all those data points, and kind of standardizing it into a comparison grid, just like a manual, what is a manual process, taking the manual work out of it so we can at a glance be like, okay, apples to apples, what are we looking at? But yeah, that's how we decide our location.
Perfect. Yeah, and one thing too, I think it's so. I learned. I just went on Deal.com's one of our customers, and I was fortunate enough to go on their retreat, and I realized in learning, talking to everyone, not a lot of people had the context and understanding why are we in this location, why are we here, and I think that Rubik's Cube is like nice, clear. Here's why we're doing it, and if you guys have any questions, check it out. So, Georgie.
I love that. I'm pinching that idea.
Same.
Yeah, totally right. And it's hard to, like, when you're dealing with floats, not quite 60 people, we're across like more than 20 countries. So we are so distributed, and it's like, you know, I had to go through a process this year picking the location of like, we could actually go anywhere in the world right now. How do we hone in on that? And for us, we do have a brief that creates our shortlist, and the shortlist has kind of developed over the years now of places that we will consider. And like number one for us is like, would our team go there on a holiday? Do they feel safe? Can they be themselves? Can they bring their kind of true selves to whatever that location is? That's like number one for us, really important. It obviously comes down to budget too. And I know we'll get into maybe more the specifics of venues, but something really important is like, what does your venue say about you right now? And that can really make or break your event, right? It's probably more your bread and butter, isn't it, in terms of picking the actual venue, but that is something that we think about a lot, where you're at in your journey. Like, for example, if you've been, you know, cutting a lot of your budget, not spending money on certain things, not hiring people, for example, but then like hold your meet up at like a really expensive, like sterile hotel or something like that, what does that say about, you know, what you're prioritizing or not prioritizing? So we really do kind of also zoom out and think about it in the bigger picture of what we're doing. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's a common challenge that comes up is where to go. One thing that we just made is pretty cool. If you guys want to come check it out, it's a flight planner tool. So you can pop in your employees where they're coming from, and it'll automatically recommend destinations based on total flight times, layover time, emissions, and cost. And it was interesting for the Deal retreat, they were trying to decide between Dubai, Spain, Florida, and Mexico. And actually going to the south of Spain, which was a little bit longer of a drive, actually saved their team over 1.5 million minutes of travel. And that's one of those things that's kind of this hidden cost for people.
And I'll add to that, Chase, like we're a B Corp now, right? So we have to stick within certain like boundaries of emissions and that like our impact on the environment is obviously really important. And inclusion too, like visas, how much, like what percentage of a team can actually get into the country that you're going to. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Who's the decision maker, the ultimate decision maker on where you go? Is it you?
It's usually me, like in consultation with the people and operations team, plus our founder, our co-founder, Glenn, and CEO. He also kind of contributes to that. And to be honest, like it usually comes down to like 2 or 3, and we go on gut feel at that point. We go through all these processes, which is pretty like black and white, and then it's like, and we've talked about surprise and delight. I know you love surprise and delight, you do as well. It's like, if you've just been to Europe, then definitely we should be going to Japan, because that is going to like, because you want to see the faces on the town hall when you announce, oh, we're going to Osaka, and watch the jaws drop. That's like your magic moment. So we consider that too, right? Like, what's this going to bring, like culturally, how will it be different, year on year? Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Next, maybe jumping into choosing a venue. So maybe you picked a destination, you want to go to Mexico or Spain. How do you think about choosing a venue? And the question is, what do you look for in a venue beyond availability and pricing?
Is this to me? We've touched on some of this. Obviously, flight lift is super important. That's not the venue itself, but the event experience doesn't start from the moment the attendee walks in the door. It actually starts the moment they get the invitation. But as it pertains to the venue, it's the moment they leave their house to get on the flight. That's the beginning of their journey. And so what does that experience look and feel like to them? How many layovers are they taking? What airport are they landing into? What's their customs experience? Do they need a visa? How far is the venue from the airport? It feels very different to land after 24 hours of travel and have a 15-minute drive or have another hour and a half. It's like another leg of your journey. Are they getting picked up by a shuttle? All of these moments shape the experience. And so acknowledging that it starts before you even enter the venue. And aside from pricing and availability, it's AV capabilities. There's obviously like a checklist of logistical requirements that we need, but it's, to Georgie's point, it's a feeling. It's the flow. Does it have natural light? What does it feel like to go from the general session to a breakout room? Are you going up and down escalators? For us at Zapier, inclusion and accessibility is super important. Do they offer gender-neutral restrooms? And if not, can we convert a bank of restrooms for everyone to feel comfortable? Can, a cornerstone of our events are these lounge spaces that we create. We create a music lounge for folks who are want to jam out. We have a gaming lounge. We have a nursing lounge for our parents who are have young children, they're nursing. A chill and ERG lounge for kind of like with fidget spinners and decompression, noise canceling headphones to kind of get away from. So does the venue offer the right spaces for us to transform and give the experience that we have committed to? It's all in the rubric.
I'll add one thing that's become really important particularly at Doist Connect, our all hands retreat, is wherever we're going, like whatever country we're going to, we want the place the venue that we're going to be staying in should be very representative of that place. It's kind of rooted in this is an amazing experience for a lot of people that work in event planning and maybe work for remote companies. You've traveled a lot, but a lot of my team, this is their one trip per year outside of their home country, and for some people it's the first time they've ever left their home country. So this is an incredible opportunity to make a huge impact on their life, and getting the real authentic experience is super important. So I think the culmination of this is last year we went to Ireland and we rented an Irish castle and had everybody in and everything we did throughout the week was very castle themed. The point you made about having a space for people to go and decompress, we called that connection court and had it kind of castle-y themed, and there were games and decompression type activities and things like that. So I guess just tying that into the whole theme has become really important and something that people really look forward to throughout the week.
You guys are so good at putting the thought into the events, right? And you really like center it around the people and the theme and that kind of thing. And like, it's something that we've been trying to do, even just down to like the details, the swag, for example, the kit, the collateral that you give people, what people are wearing. We found, it's really important if you can find local suppliers that can make things, those kind of details are what really like elevates the quality of the event. Like in Osaka, we found we wanted to get some really beautiful like handmade chopsticks for the team, and we found this one particular type of wood. This tree only grows in Osaka, nowhere else. And this company that had been, or a business that had been making these chopsticks by hand for like hundreds of years. It was really special, and it was just this idea of like you can do it one way, or you can kind of go that extra step to give it a really kind of authentic and like respectful angle. Yeah.
Something you mentioned earlier, Georgie, that I thought was like really important, that's been like a learning process for me, is kind of like challenging your assumptions. So up until several years ago, we would always like fly into major cities and stay in like a city center hotel in that major city. And that's because it's like, oh, it's convenient logistics wise, this just makes sense. But then we tried something different, and we went like an hour and a half outside the city. And my assumption was people are going to be kind of pissed because they're going to arrive after these long flights, and then they're going to be like, oh, now I have another trip to get there. But the reason that we tried that was like we were able to rent a venue outside the city that was more affordable. That castle that I mentioned was more affordable than a Dublin city center hotel. But yeah, there was an hour trip that you had to go on afterwards. People actually liked the trip, the ride together. To your point that you made earlier, they made connections with their teammates during that trip. So just like challenging yourself, asking for feedback, iterating on it every year. Now it's a staple at Doist Connect. We choose a venue that feels like ours. We do a buyout. It's just us there. It's 1 week like all together. And so that's the default now. But it wouldn't have been 5 years ago at all.
That's such a good point.
I'm curious, with choosing a venue, do you look at, like, say, with your all hands? Are you going at like 3-star hotel, 4-star, 5-star? Does it vary by retreat? And how do you get confidence that a venue is going to deliver? Because as we probably all know, if it's beautiful, doesn't mean they're going to be amazing at delivering the experience. So
at Zapier, we usually hover around like the 4-star. We just make sure that basic needs are met, that there's a 24-hour front desk. There's certain, it doesn't have to be luxury, but there's certain like expectations with a group of our size, and that we just want to make sure that there's, like baseline comfort. It does vary from city to city. Obviously, budgets are different in different cities, but like I said, we tend to hover around that 4-star. In terms of making sure the venue delivers, I've been on the venue side, I've been on the sales hotel side, and so I know the process well, and I know that intimately. And I just make sure everything is in writing. Everything's in the contract. That salesperson might seem like your best friend when you're negotiating. They're really excited to get your business. Everyone's vibing. They're telling you to envision, all your attendees coming through the door and this beautiful pool party. If it's not in the contract, it didn't happen. It is not a kindness to not address something. It is not fun and friendly and easy to just leave something out. Everything should be documented as a concession, as a clause, and then it sets you up for success and them up for success, so you can be partners and you can just head into execution. Most likely that person who sold you the dream is not the one who's going to produce the dream. And so you want to make sure their team is also set up for success, and they're not having to dig through emails or voice notes to figure out what was promised. You want to start with that baseline. Here's what we agreed to. Now let's go get it.
awesome. Thanks for sharing. Just for sake of time, let's move on to designing your agenda and experience. So I think structure and flow and how the retreat is set up is super key. Chase, I was wondering if you could share, you were sharing a framework that you use, and I find a lot of people jam too many meetings in, and I really like your framework. So if you'd be willing to share it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, sorry if this is repetitive. I've maybe talked about this a little bit too much, but we at some point decided we wanted to like really formalize our agenda, or at least have some kind of like structure that we were going to start from, because we found the natural inclination is to want to pack the agenda full of not just work, which is the first inclination that we had to fight, but the second was like activities and making sure every minute of every day is accounted for. We don't want anybody to get bored. That won't be a problem, trust me. So we came up with this formula that we kind of start with. It's 20, 30, 50. 20% of the agenda is dedicated to like pure work, 30% to like planned activities, and then 50% to optimizing for serendipitous conversation and relaxation and just like letting humans be humans and hang out together. And so we start from there and we tweak each agenda accordingly, depending on like what the goal of that particular offsite is. But I think the key takeaway is like, you know, I think everybody that I've ever talked to in event planning or planning offsites tends to first go to overpacking the agenda and then also really leaning into like thinking that you're going to get a ton done during that week. And that can happen, but it's also perhaps, and we found this to be the case for us, like not the best use of that time. And in our case, we got 2 weeks a year to spend with people. We spend the other 50 weeks a year working together, so we feel like we can afford to dial it down in terms of work and focus more on the human connection aspect.
I guess one follow-up question. I'm just imagining someone going to their CEO and being like, hey, we're going to spend 50% free time, 30% doing activities, 20% working. Hey, I'm spending $1 million on this thing. I want work all day long. How would you handle that conversation?
I think there's a lot of data out there that shows that you can tweak the agenda in whichever direction you want to go, and you can get the result that you're looking for. So if you want to go in there and pack the agenda and get a lot of work done, you can, and then survey the team afterwards, you'll probably find you got a lot of work done. It's about designing it for what you want to get out of it. In our case, we decided like, we get a lot of work. We're pretty efficient as a team, 50 weeks a year. We can afford to be a little bit inefficient to create those deeper connections, trust, psychological safety. Like those are our goals with this. So we optimize for that.
Interesting. So the retreat's less about work and more about creating those connections and bond, what leads to better work.
More or less, yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Anything else, Dan?
We have like a similar breakdown. I think it's maybe like 40-60 for Zapier. We do tend to focus on the work, but we make sure that the type of work we're doing is that the kind that's like uniquely suited for in-person. Like the thing that's going to be really hard to do, like ideating, brainstorming, like working together, product knowledge, like that works really well in person. And so it's work, but it's having fun through the work. We're gamifying it. We're making sure that folks are feeling engaged and connected and revitalized through it. And it's not just that like boring work.
I'm curious, Sasha, you were sharing a little story about a musical band that started up at one of the retreats. How did that happen? Was that structured in the agenda? Did it organically happen? And just make sure what came out of that.
Yeah, Zapians, folks who work at Zapier, we call ourselves Zapians, are very musically talented, I've learned. It's something that just sort of happened organically. Folks just, we rented a bunch of instruments and people gathered around them and kind of started jamming out. And so it's become a staple. We have it every year. We have a music lounge. Our last retreat we just wrapped one in March in New Orleans, which is obviously like a music-heavy city. So for our keynote, our CEO and one of our other founders came out and, played like a jazz song. They were really good. I'm like, oh, you're just good at everything? Okay. But it's really fun. It's something people look forward to. It's just one of those things that becomes like a ritual.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
I mean, I'll add to that I know, like, Doist, you do a football game as well, right? Yeah. There's something really powerful about, yes, you have your planned agenda, whether that's social, whether that's conferencing, and you have the gaps in the agenda. There's something really powerful in the optional things as well, opt-in, opt-out. And, like, those moments where you don't overplan and you realise, oh, we've actually got, like, a bunch of people here that are all mad about football, and maybe a few Australians that might try and figure out the rules as you go. And if you leave those gaps, then you get those kind of magical moments and they become ritual, and that's something we talked about, isn't it? Like, you guys have that too. Footballs are pretty, that's a pretty basic, a lot of people like football. And I'm such a creep, but I know that if you mention football in Float Slack, you get like a minimum of 11 reactions. 11, that's the least amount that I've ever seen. So yeah, you find those things that connect people and then you give those moments of opt-in or opt-out and you can really get a sense for what things are going to work for the team.
I also love these activities. Like we also have a group that's formed a band, and they play, like, this band's fluid, so it changes every year who's really involved in it. But they play as like entertainment for the company, like at the last evening of our event. And then like that's kind of become a ritual that people look forward to. You don't really know what's going to happen, but it's like it's a core part of the experience. The football match is another one. We have a group that's called like Doist DJs that they perform, like they create a set and play music on the last night. And like that breaks the bigger group down into smaller group around shared interests. And like that's where real bonds are made, right? So like providing the framework for them to do that is important, and then letting them run and do it it's awesome to see what happens.
In Italy last year, I was walking out to the patio where we were having our team breakfast, and there was a small group of people sitting there, and someone was percolating coffee. Like they're actually like making their own coffee. They'd gone and got a kettle and boiled water, and I realized it was the coffee enthusiasts that have a Slack channel that I'm not a part of. I do love coffee, and they had organised to catch up at breakfast and do this together. So it was like this unofficial part of the program, and I think, if you try and overplan or making space for those moments, I just thought that was so cool just to see people off doing that. They'd never met in person, those people, and I think that's so powerful.
I guess that's why you can run 13 retreats a year. You don't have to pay for entertainment.
Yeah, cutting corners at every chance. Yeah.
I think it's really these, I've learned in life, these uncommon commonalities between people that create these bonds. One thing I saw that was kind of interesting is they themed it around different subjects, and you could pick your interests, and it would automatically group people around music or sports and this sort of thing. And those kind of things is what creates that bond between people. So. One thing I wanted to see outside of, say, bands and DJs, is there one activity that you guys did that really stood out as like magical and had high impact?
I'll share one because kind of piggybacking off the last part. A lot of people do balk at the like 20% work aspect of what I was sharing a little bit ago. But one thing I kind of left out was that and this is to Sasha's point, actually, like we're really intentional about how we use that 20%. And so we pack a lot of work and a lot of really impactful work into that 20%. And one of the ways we do that is we host, and this is connected to the question, it's like a ritual that's become something that everybody looks forward to every year. We call it Doist Builds, and it's a hackathon where basically we present, we did it a little bit differently this year, but the general idea is like we present a few topics that people can work together on for a whole day, in person, synchronous activity for 5 or 6 hours, heads down, really focused on something. And everybody really looks forward to this every year. It's one of the highlights of the retreat, one of the highest rated aspects of the retreat, which is kind of weird because it's like you're working, but people are really into it. And the coolest thing is like this past year, the winner of that hackathon, right after they won, they created this new onboarding flow for our product. And in like 4 hours, the CXOs then turned around while we were all going off to dinner and actually implemented it, and it bumped our onboarding numbers like 30% in a few days. So it was like really cool to see a few hours of heads down work, and this ritual that everybody loves created like a lasting impact on the company. And like that kind of like proved the ROI. So I like immediately asked for a budget bump for next year.
Now I see why you get even more money. Sasha, Georgie, anything on special activities that stood out?
Yeah, I think all of our lounge spaces have become like a ritual that folks look forward to. The music lounge, the gaming lounge. Something our team does really well is our ERGs have an event every year, and it's different every year. And so we've done a silent disco. We've done this year we did a glow bingo, and so it's really fun. It's really engaging. Everyone's welcome, whether you're a member or just someone interested in learning about the ERGs. They certainly design it to feel super inclusive and just make sure that everyone feels welcome there. And so it's different every year, but it is a staple event that I think folks really look forward to, and it feels like just like a warm hug. All those events are great. And then Marcos, who's our program manager for our diversity inclusion program, is actually in the audience. So he does a great job of organizing those folks and making sure those events are not just like meaningful and impactful, but they're logistically like sound and they fit into the programming and all that. So great to work with partners that are like-minded.
I mean, I think the only thing I'll add is, for me, it's probably my personal preference are icebreakers. like to get the absolute most out of remote workers. You've got people who choose to work alone, or some people in co-working or in like community environments, but generally speaking, choose to work Han Solo most of the time. You need something to make everyone feel comfortable, to get that energy going, to make the most, like the best use of that time that you've got together, right? And to get the energy levels up. And so I think for me, like the icebreakers are crucial, really critical. And yes, sometimes they can come together at the last minute as well. But, you know, I find that the cheesier the better. And we were kind of, Chase and I were laughing about these earlier about icebreakers, and you think, oh, cringe, icebreaker. But like, I think also it's so awkward getting into a room, you're a new starter at a team, you're going to your first meetup, you walk into a room with like 50 plus people that you've never met in person and you're expected to collaborate with them face to face straight away. That's so awkward. We've tried a couple of things, like we did a podcast in the lead up to one of our meetups where we like interviewed team members and they were able to share a few things about them, and that was quite cool because then as people were arriving to the meetup, they could see, oh, there's Sasha. Okay, I know she lives in LA. I listened to that podcast. I've got like something I can talk about when I first see her. So for me, it's like breaking down those barriers of people being able to collaborate as soon as they get face to face too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a cool way to break the ice too is through humor. And fun fact, Georgie used to be a comedian, right?
No, not a comedian.
Do we have a joke?
No, I never used to be a comedian.
What was it then? What was it?
Thanks though. No, I've done theatre. Like I studied theatre and writing theatre and stuff. Yeah.
So like interpreted dance?
I'm never going to tell you anything in a face-to-face conversation ever again. It's getting cut out of the whole thing.
Maybe the next question here is around inclusive. And how do you guys make, if no one comes on the retreat, well, that's not very impactful. So how do you encourage your employees or help them and support them to get on the retreat? And do you have kind of a number that usually have like 80% attendance, 90, 50? So yeah, maybe kick it off there.
For us, we like to see as many people attend the retreat as possible. In the past few years, it's kind of looked like 80 to 85% in person, which is a pretty good target. We just do everything we can to try and support folks and think about any blocker that they might be thinking about for a reason to not come, and just help them through overcoming that. If it's something that we can do, obviously we mentioned for nursing parents, we offer a lounge on site. We allow them to bring a caregiver +1 to help caretake for the child. If it's, a nursing parent who needs to ship breast milk home, we have a partnership with Milk Stork and we pay for that. We just make sure we're thinking about all these different ways. For folks who need to secure visas, we pay for visas. We support taking time off if you need to travel to a different city to get your visa. We make sure we pay for TSA pre-check for everyone to make sure that that is not a hurdle. Some folks are sensitive about traveling through TSA and getting patted down, and we just don't want any reason to be like, that's the reason I'm not going to come. It obviously comes down to other commitments. There's a lot of stuff that we cannot overcome, and so it's never 100%, but we try and do what we can to make sure that we're supporting folks and that they feel like the company is behind them and supporting their attendance.
Where our attendance rate is actually, it's almost 95%, which does sound really high, except we're just under 60 people, whereas, you guys are much bigger. And I think for us, we definitely ask people if they're not coming, would they mind sharing why? I think that's, one way of learning. I mean, I wouldn't have much to add to what you just said there. I think you summed it up really beautifully. We kind of, I think it's just like hearing from folks is the only way. Yeah.
I'm got some really good ideas from you there, so I'm taking some notes. The way I look at this is like this is incredibly important to be inclusive. I mean, if you have your normal, if you're working in a co-located environment and you miss the company happy hour or something like that, it's no big deal. You'll see everybody at the office next week. This is like our 1 or 2 time per year chance to get people together. So even a 5% swing in attendance is a big deal in our case. We shoot for 90%. and it varies a little bit. We've also found, like, as we've scaled up in headcount, the percentage goes down a little bit. A couple things, like, tactically that we've done to try to improve inclusivity is, again, like most of the time, if someone can't come, it's parental based. It's because they have a newborn or something like that. And we used something that I think is really interesting is, like, again, challenging assumptions. We used to think that parents with newborns would want to bring their newborns with them to the retreat and bring a significant other. So we supported that. What we found from them when we actually asked them what they want, they were like, no, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job at being a coworker. I'm not doing a good job at being a parent. I'm not doing a good job at being a significant other. I would rather I wasn't allowed that. So what we instead did was we offer a stipend, like $75 a day for every day that you're gone, that goes to your significant other to help take care of the kids at home. So that could be babysitter or ordering food or whatever. And so that really helped improve attendance. We also offered, like, a shortened version of the itinerary. So we front loaded a lot of the key activities, like work activities, at the beginning of the retreat, and then offered the option for people to leave halfway through the week. And that helped because a lot of people were saying, well, I can't be gone for a full week, but I could be gone for 3 days. And so, again, I think it just comes down to, like, intentionality, asking your team why aren't they able to come, and then coming up with creative solutions to make sure that they can be there.
Thanks for sharing. Just one more question. We'll maybe keep the answers semi-short. Just want to leave a couple minutes for questions. So retreat bloopers, lessons learned. Do you have any funny stories? You know, nothing goes perfect on a retreat. I think it'd be cool to share. And I know Sasha and Chase, you have 2 interesting stories. And George, you might have one too. So, yeah. Sasha, you want to kick us off?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Georgie's the comedian. I mean, if you want to start.
No, I'm not a comedian. No. Yeah, there was this one time. No. I mean, yes, we've made so many mistakes. It's like, it's like, which one do you share? I mean, I think a recent one, which was a really cool learning process for myself and for us, was last year, or not last year actually, but one year we went to, a really old venue, which for me, I think I kind of romanticized the idea of it being really historical, really inspiring in that sense, really beautiful. And then you kind of get feedback from people. We did a bit of a co-working setup, and I thought, there'll be people, like, sitting outside, they'll be looking up at this castle, there's festoon lighting, it'll be beautiful. And all the feedback was, I will never work on a chair like that again. There were mosquitoes, like, the Wi-Fi sucked, like, just this feedback. And I went, float people take their workspace very seriously. Like, how dare I suggest that people are happy sitting wherever, working wherever, when they've got work to do, they want to be really productive, they want to make the best use of their time. And actually, I'm like, this choice of mine, like, didn't actually align with our values at all. And I learnt from that. And I think every year I learn something. That one, strike that up as a bit of a fail. And I think, like, my team, like, tend to not hold back. They're not backwards in coming forwards. They let you know. Yeah, it's great.
Thanks for sharing. I think we're getting pretty close on time, but I'll give you a little sneak preview, and then maybe if you want to find Sasha and Chase after. Chase had to move his entire team out of Austria. Everyone got COVID. They locked down the borders. They kicked him out of the hotel, and he has a whole cool story on that, so we'll maybe tease that for next year or later in the day. And Sasha, there's an ice storm, the whole city shut down, and they had to pivot the whole event. So nothing goes perfect. You adapt, you move on, and we'll end it there. Open it to questions.